Hi there and welcome to today's vlog. Now Sue and I have had just come back from a great week in South Wales, spending a week with our daughter Kaz in Llanelli, where she's lived for many years. In fact, I think she's lived there now longer than she lived in England. So she's becoming a naturalised Welsh person. We had a great time. We visited one or two lovely places like Mumbles. We love going there. And we had a good time with Kaz, helped her with one or two jobs around the house. I even managed, and people who know me will find this hard to believe, to put up a bathroom cabinet, and it's still attached to the wall several days later. So that's a miracle in itself. I also did a little bit of work in the garden. There was a very large conifer tree at the bottom of the garden that Kaz wanted bringing down. So I got the saw out and slowly attacked it, and I was amazed to find when I got right down to the bottom. I mean, the tree was probably about 8 foot tall, quite wide, some thick trunk, a thick trunk, some thick branches. But when I got down to the bottom, I saw, to my amazement, the original pot. So many years ago, I mean, Kaz has been in that house 7 years, so it was long before that. The owner must have bought this conifer tree in a pot and stuck it at the bottom of the garden. And at some stage it had blown over, the pot had perhaps cracked and the tree had burst out, and so it had grown to this massive conifer tree. And that got me to thinking, really. If you watch a programme such as Gardener's World, you'll hear Monty Don or whoever saying that at times we need to repot plants because the pot in which they were placed has become too small and the roots are getting restricted. So you repot a plant into a bigger pot to give room for growth, but also to put fresh soil in to add nutrients and help the tree to grow. And I got to thinking about whether some of us in our lives have been restricted in a way that a plant in a pot can become restricted when it tries to grow. How can we become restricted? Well, perhaps by the way we think about ourselves. We don't think we can achieve very much. We don't think much of ourselves, or perhaps what people have said about us. People have called us stupid, or maybe parents or teachers said you're not up to much, and we've taken that on board, or what people have said about us. And so our growth potential has been restricted by the pot of expectation, our own expectation, others, or the pot of words, what people have said about us. And we don't think, we see some great possibility, but we think, I can't do that. I remember my sisters often used to tell me when I was little, there's no such word as can't, but so many of us are restricted by that word, aren't we? It's really too, or cannot. We don't think we can achieve such a thing, or this, that, and the other. No, I can't do that. But perhaps we should not be influenced so much by what people say about us, or even our own thoughts about what we can achieve, but by what God says. Remember, Paul writes in one of his letters, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This Sunday I'm going back to a little village in East Yorkshire where I grew up, because it's the closing service of the Methodist Church in that village, which is a sad occasion. But we're going there to celebrate all that God has achieved through that little chapel over many, many years. And it had a profound influence, or rather the people there, those who taught me and helped me grow in the Christian faith. That's where I first gave my life to Jesus. But those who knew me in those days when I was a little lad knew how shy and embarrassed I was when anybody came to talk to me, would never imagine that one day I would become a Methodist minister, a church leader. In fact, I would never imagine that myself. I was surprised when God called me, but I was able to do that, not because I had great abilities in myself, but because God had called me. And when God calls us, he gives us everything we need to fulfill that purpose. So as I think about that tree that burst out of its pot and grew to a great height, let's remember that we ought not to be restricted by what people say about us, what people think about us, by our own thoughts about ourselves, our own inadequacies. But let's remember that when God calls us, He equips us. That through God, through Christ, we can do anything that He calls us to do. We can do great things. We're ordinary people, but through God's Spirit at work within us, we can accomplish extraordinary things. So let's keep our eyes on Jesus. Follow Him, even when we move outside our comfort zone, that little plant pot that might be our comfort zone. Let's move out of there when God calls us, and in His strength achieve great things. So God bless you. Thank you so much for listening today.